Hello, I'm Chris Athanas. I'm a KMP developer. Tech Support said they're coming out Tuesday. Sorry, I haven't done a video in a while, but I was doing some other things, and now I'm gonna back to doing some more videos for you guys. And today I'm gonna get back in the swing of things by closing this up here, and then reacting to this video about logging. A lot of people like dismiss logging, or it's not very well discussed anywhere. About some of these best practices, like how do you do logs? Just not print statement x equals 75, or if you look at the print log, you see on an Android as you develop, you can like see all the going of all the apps talking when their log statements, and a lot of it's just like, what is all this garbage? It makes no sense to anyone other than the programmer who actually put the log statement in there. So we're going to discuss ways that you can set yourself up so when you do have issues, which we're going to always have issues with software, how you can do yourself a favor when you're trying to figure these things out and write some intelligent statements. So even if you're not the programmer, or you actually are the programmer, and it was 17 months ago, and you haven't touched this thing since, and you're expected to debug this problem. Yeah, logging practices become a major issue. So let's somebody say. This is my first time listening to this. I've only listened to the first couple of minutes. I like it. This guy does need to shave it. I need to shave my beard. He needs to shave it. Anyway, let's keep going. Come on.
Everyone thinks they understand logging until they're staring at a production issue. It's 3 a.m. and their logs have no context, no structure, and they're just sifting through a wall of text looking for that needle in a haystack that explains the issue. Let me show you some of the best tips to help you out for next time. First, let's have a clear game plan. Don't just throw log statements everywhere hoping something useful will stick. See this mess? This is exactly what happens when you log without objectives.
Yeah. This is what you normal. This is the normal practice because everyone does it while they're actually writing the thing and they're trying to debug it. They're not thinking ahead of time. It's like, what happens if it actually does crash here? How hard is this going to be to figure out what the hell just happened? And instead of thinking that part through, they're like, oh no, it'll never get here. So we can just log informational stuff. That's fine. And if an error happens, well, we don't have to actually explain anything at that line. Well, go use the debugger. It's like, oh no, not with these modern architectures. You gotta know the context, where it is, the file, the line. What the heck is this thing for? What went wrong? What's missing? What is it expecting?
So here's a good rule. Before you write a single log statement, think about some key questions. What are your application's main goals? What critical operations need monitoring? And what KPIs actually matter to you? Let's take error logging as an example here. Your objective isn't just to scream, hey, something broke. Your goal is to provide enough context to fix the problem. Think about what the future you wants when debugging at 3 a.m. You might start by overlogging and then trim back. It's way easier to remove the noise than to add missing information when you're already in production.
Well, I mean, this is the problem, right? If you go to look at Androids, like people just let that stuff in there, and it just has no meaning to anyone. One of the first questions I got when I first got into Android, I wasn't a Unix user yet. I was like, "What is all this stuff here?" And my teacher's like, "Oh, don't you can just ignore that." I'm like, "What?" It seems like, well, why did they put it there if we want to ignore it? It's like, we don't know. It's just best to not talk about it. They even approach us. It's like, okay, here's the problem. These people, the programmers, these professionals, have left these debug lines in here for them, right? Just for them and their team, and that for that programmer. If that programmer leaves, those lines are meaningless. You actually have to go look into the source code and see what those variables are actually printing out, why they have the values that they do, what their expected values are. Is this normal? Is this out of range? What is the range? We don't know.
Actually take the time to periodically review your logging strategy as well though, what's useful and what's just noise. Remember, the best logging strategy isn't about capturing everything, it's about capturing the right things. When you get this right, finding and fixing issues becomes so...
Is the order missing? Is the order invalid? Is it a missing record? Is it invalid data? Is it just expecting a number and it gets a digit, or doesn't get a digit, it gets an alphanumeric value, or it's expecting non-Cyrillic text, it's getting Cyrillic text. It's like all that kind of stuff. It's like, what was that? It's like how we write the test. We're supposed to write the test for the back end, like what we expected, what the actual thing is, and like why is it dying here? What's the problem? Not error not found. It's like, okay, -1. Okay, does that really tell us anything about what the context is of what the problem is that we're trying to figure out? Why is it dying here? Not, oh, it'll never get here, or it should never get here, so we can just ignore that. It's like, no, if it gets into this section, something's really bad, and you want to make that diagnosis of what's going wrong, right? Is the first thing we always have to look for. Like, why is this dying? And if you have an obvious reason, it's like, oh, because there's the order's missing, or the server's down, or expecting this server over here, and I can't find it. That kind of stuff. It's like, I'm like looking for this and I can't find it. Not died. I can't find it. And it's like, well, what were you trying to find?
So much easier. Now that we know the why we're logging though, let's talk about how. This is where log levels come in.
Yeah.
Let's break down the 4 common levels that you may see. First, we have info. This is your business as usual level. Think a successful user login, important transactions, the stuff you actually care about tracking.
And this needs to be minimalized, except for like really critical parts of the application, like starting up and where it's hosting, that kind of stuff. Like when you have too much of this stuff, it just gets crowded and noisy, and leave infos when you're writing it. Okay, fine, but like turn that stuff off.
Something like user completed checkout, and then maybe the order number. Then we have the warning level. Consider this your early warning system. Something's not quite right, but your house isn't on fire yet. Yeah. Something like payment processing is taking longer than usual. Right. Then we have the error level. Now we're talking about some real problems, like a failed payment or a crash service. Something like database connection failed. And then finally, we have fatal. Hopefully you never see this. This is the everything's gone wrong level. Either part of your stack or the entire application just crashed. Something like system out of memory shutting down. Now, in production, most apps default to the info level to keep things nice and clean. But, and this is crucial, you need to plan to crank up the detail when you're trying to hunt down bugs, as this may not include key trouble.
Right, we're not worried about the info stuff. We're worried about when bugs happen. This is the thing, the nightmare shit that has to happen. It's like, why is this dying? User request invalid. Okay, what was it trying to do? What were we looking for? Was there a specific thing? Is it a specific case? Is there a specific ID associated with this error? You gotta give some of that, some kind of context of like, what the hell's going wrong. Not the info stuff is almost irrelevant.
Shooting information. This is where you should plan to log at an increased verbosity temporarily while investigating issues, and also have a way to manage that verbosity when needed as well. You may commonly see this in tools you use yourself when you're able to select the verbosity level that you want to use. Do that in your own applications as well. Speaking of keeping things nice and organized though, let's talk about structured logging. Look at this mess right here. This is what basic logging looks like. Sure.
Yeah, random numbers. And the same thing we have in like when we're writing code. Same stuff. Like, why do we have random values? We don't know what these things are. And these are just context free. We have no idea what. Now I know what a 404, programmers know that, network engineers, but this is, what happens if it's a different 404? What happens if some other thing, your application error or something else? What's the 153? Who knows? Who knows? Local somewhere. Yeah, it's just strings, random values. Now, when you're at the programmer, when you're first writing this stuff, yes, it's like, of course that was the error code. I just wrote that thing, right? This is like while you're writing it, but these are left in here because this best practices about logging is completely ignored by computer science. And this is the kind of shit that fucks us up. And it's like, why are academics concerned with sorting algorithms and operating systems when this is the kind of stuff that we're working on teams of 3 or more people that will make us completely lose our minds? Because we're not all just like going, we have to go now reconstruct all the thought patterns that went into making this log statement and figure out what the hell's going wrong, right? How many hours lost? Like, these are critical things. The academic, they just drop the ball. They're complete. Oh, that's the side issue. You'll figure that stuff out. No, that was the problem, is we didn't figure it out, sir. Sir Professor.
Sure, we humans can read it, but try getting a machine to make sense of that. It's going to be a lot harder. Instead, let me show you structured logging. Here's what your logs should look like. Every piece of information has its own field. That's not just prettier, it's more powerful. Now you can filter, search, and analyze your logs. You want to find all of the timeout errors, or you need to check how many errors happened last Tuesday. Exactly. Really easy to do now. Here's the cool part as well. Logging frameworks can solve this for you. Consider using one of these if you aren't already there.
I mean, how about just having, look, man, these tools are great and all, but it's just the thought process of, oh yeah, maybe it is more important that if the info logs are not the critical thing, that we actually have error, like very complete JSONable error logs that look like how everything's named, like what it's trying to do, what it didn't get, why it's having an issue on this particular thing, all that stuff. That's got to be there. And it does feel like at the time when we go down the unhappy path, right? This is called unhappy path. When we spend time there, because there's so many unhappy, and computers, the happy path is a straight one through. It's like, that's the easiest one. If there's no problems, it goes straight through. But all these side issues and all the error conditions, all this, that's where all of our time is spent, right? And as you try and tell people, it's like, no, it's just everything works fine. Oh, no. It's when they go wrong, and they go wrong all the time. And that's the other thing, too, is these academics are like, Well, how do you, like, they don't even talk about this stuff. They don't even discuss like how all these failure modes and how having this logging system is a thought pattern of like, yes, if it died right here, it'd be really bad not to know why. And like, I better put something here that shows me exactly what the frick happened and why, so I can go in there and fix it. Because most of the time we're debugging these things, we're trying to figure out what the hell's going wrong. We have no, most of the time it's like, what, you just die, why this is like. And if the error log says, oh, I couldn't get order number 65-3 because the name was in Cyrillic and I was expecting alphanumeric. Oh, okay, it's this particular order. So I can go look at the order, reproduce it, right? That's like 80% of the time. Most of the time, I was like, what is going wrong? And if you know what's going wrong, it's like fixing it. If you know how everything else is put together, it's not that. That's not the hard part. I mean, it's all this other crap. Like, why is this dying here?
There's tons of great options for every language. But if you find yourself using
my point was relying on these toolkits is not the thing. Having the mindset of like, oh, I want to make my job or someone else's job easier, so I don't pull my hair out and burn my team, because the thing sucks because it's spitting out all kinds of messages that nobody has any idea what they're for and what they mean, and they're all random numbers. It looks cool. Oh, I'm a wizard. Look at me. It's the Matrix. It's like, no, man.
Service that doesn't support structured logging, you can also use tools like Vector to transform those logs into parsable JSON as well. If your logs aren't structured, you're essentially just writing very expensive text files. So now that we've got our logs structured, let's talk about what actually goes in them. Look at this log entry here. It's essentially just saying something's wrong, which is technically true, but your future self is going to be annoyed at how.
Okay, yeah, right. I'm going to guess what he's going to say here. He's going to say the info stuff. It's not info. This is an error. This is some sort of warning. It's not even a warning. This is an error, not a fatal one, but it's definitely an error. And login attempt failed. I mean, maybe it is an info level, but it should be like warn, right? Because if there's a bunch of these happening, someone's trying to get into your system, or you've got something wrong with your authentication system, right? So this is more of a warning, right? Timestamps, cool, level, okay. And then so the message, it should be like, which user, which account were they trying to get into? Is it the same account over and over again? Or is there different people? Is there something? You got to have that stuff in there, man. And you're not going to be like, and don't put the password, don't expose the password that they're trying to type in. But you could say the number of characters in the original password. I don't know. Maybe there's just some kind of way just to give more information about what the hell's going on, why this thing failed. And at the programmer, at the time when he wrote the log statement, he knows exactly why something failed, or has a pretty good clue. So just put that in there, would you?
Message actually is. A better version would be this one. Notice the difference? We've got the who, what, where, and why all in one.
There we go. Yeah, the IP, the number, how many attempts on this one in the past 24 hours, maybe. The request ID, which service is down, the location, geotagged. Hell yes, this is super duper useful, right? This made it become like, oh, okay, look, man, there's could be all kinds of things going on. This is the fifth time we've seen this on the same ID. Someone's trying to hack in, or we have a botnet attack coming in. All those things.
You need to
right?
debug broken logins. You've got everything you need. You've got the user ID, location, device info, and even how many times they tried. Here's a good list of things to capture in every log entry. Request IDs for tracing requests across microservices, user IDs for user session context if it's needed, system state data like database or cache status, and then full error context as well, things like your stack traces if they're relevant as well. Remember.
Yeah, and even in the block you could say, what part of the code base you're in, what application is running, who all that stuff. It's super duper useful, especially if you're going to do microservices. Well, microservices this is not even talked about, but it's super duper crucial. Even if you're like working on those cross functional teams, everyone's got you got to have a logging system that everyone can look into and see what's going on, and have this idea of like, yes, we're going to do logging because it's the kind of thing we have to see. If we're going to do hopping from service to service to service, we have to have some sort of system that shows what went wrong and why.
Your logs are your system's black box recorder. Make them detailed enough that you can replay and understand any scenario that happened, not just
not any, just really the failure cases. Not any. That's a lot of cases, man. But just the error ones where things are falling down and falling over and not doing well. Yes, those are the places you do it. If things are going okay, who cares? You're probably never going to see a message anyway. Why do you care? If everything's working fine, why do you care? Right? Those are critical ones. That's the any he's talking about. I don't believe that. I think you shouldn't. I should minimize on those and maximize on. Okay, we died here.
Know that it actually happened. Let's talk about log sampling now as well, or how to keep your build from giving you a heart attack. If you're running a high traffic system, you might be generating hundreds of gigabytes or even terabytes of
Right.
logs every day.
Right. This is the info logs. This is why you're like, well, you don't need those. You're not going to look at them anyway. You're only going to look at, when do you look at the logs? Do you look at the logs while everything's going great? Never. Why would you? They're super boring. Everything's working like you thought you would. You only look at the logs when things are going wrong, right? So if things are going wrong, why is you got 69 gigabytes of logs? If things are going, if you're going, this is going that wrong, you've got big top problems. You got big problems, man. You got big problems. Like, so if things are going right, it's going to be a little one, a little thing. It's like just the errors that happen, just the warnings and the errors. The info stuff, forget that shit.
At that scale, storing every single log is expensive and mostly unnecessary. This is where sampling comes in. Instead of storing every single log, you store a representative sample. It's like a poll. You don't need to ask every person, you just need a good sample. Authentication service logs every login attempt. With a 20% sampling rate, out of 10 identical login events, you'd only need to go ahead and store 2 of them. But here's where it gets super smart. You can be selective about what you sample. Say you're having an error spike, maybe keep all of your error logs, but sample the success logs. Say you're having high traffic to a specific endpoint, go ahead and sample more aggressively there, but keep full logs for your critical path.
I don't know about this sampling thing. Maybe you just like delete the old logs as they're, keep them around for 48 hours max kind of thing. The 72 hours, or make, have another thing for like the errors when the errors are getting critical errors, like they just never get trashed or something, or are they manually deleted? But all the other stuff just rolls through. The sampling, I don't know how. I'm not sure what he means by sampling, other than like keeping a small rolling log of everything. But if you just sample, it's like you're not going to get all the stuff, right? Yeah, and you only want to look at errors anyway. So here we go.
Paths. This is another great feature where a logging framework or observability framework like OpenTelemetry can help you out with built-in sampling. This simple change can cut your logging costs by 80% or more, while still giving you all the insights you need. Just remember, implement sampling early. Don't wait until your logging costs spike.
Yeah, I would just avoid over logging. Because these cloud manufacturers, because they know that we're not supposed to be logging this much. They know this. They know we're only looking at these things when the errors happen. We're not looking at these things at for info. Like, it's like, no. Now, I think the sampling when he's talking about OpenTelemetry just simply the CPU time. Well, yeah, but that's how the telemetry works. I'm not sure what he's talking about here exactly. Other than, how would you, if you're having errors and stuff, you're going to just see the errors and go look at the log. I don't get it. Go ahead.
Next, let's talk about canonical log lines. When you're first starting out, you might log things as they happen, like the user clicked the login button, we're now checking credentials, login successful. The problem is, when something goes wrong, you're pretty much stuck playing detective, jumping between different log entries, trying to figure out what happened. Not very fun. This is where canonical log lines come in. Think of it as a single log entry that tells the whole story. It's like a movie summary instead of watching all the scenes separately. For example, at the end of every request, we could create one log entry that captures everything important. What the user tried to do, who they were, what went wrong, how
Yeah, this is cool. For the errors.
long it took, and even how much time we spent in the database. So next time something breaks, instead of scrolling through hundreds of logs, you've got everything you need in one place. It's like having a TLDR for every request that hits your server. There's actually a better way to do this as well, in my opinion.
I mean, I guess you really want that, though. Do you really want to log every single request that comes into your server? Maybe you could have a Redis database that just counts them. Like, it just keeps that rolling tally. Because do you really need to know every single one that comes in? I don't know if that's really necessary. You want to see the ones that are screwing up, or if they're going to cause some kind of problem with them, yeah. But everyone that comes in, I mean, isn't your database already tracking that already when you do the orders and stuff? Who cares what they're doing all over the base? I mean, that's for, and also, why are you logging that? Why you should be putting that into some sort of event monitoring? Not event monitoring. What is it called? What is it called? Damn it. Your analytics. Your analytics. You should be doing that with analytics. You shouldn't be using your log for tracking where people are going around your data, your site. So I'm not really 100% sold on that.
And that is to utilize distributed tracing with tools like OpenTelemetry. Traces allow you to maintain the entire journey of a request across all of your services, still seeing each individual step as a span, but having an easy way to link them as one full request. Check out the video on traces versus spans if you want to learn more, and subscribe while you're there as well. Next up,
this is like microservices stuff, I guess. If you have I don't really recommend microservices at all. Maybe service-oriented architectures where you've distributed it. You actually do have a distributed service-based architecture, but you should be making that inside of a monolith first and build it in that way. And I've got a whole video series on that. If you want to see where I'm coming from on that, and why that works that way. And I got some stuff on my GitHub that kind of explains how to design these things. It's Igor Bugienko's style, which is the same one as
though, you know what's worse? No logs, having logs everywhere. Imagine you're running a modern app. You've got a web server. Though, you know what's worse than having no logs? Having logs everywhere. Imagine you're running a modern app. You've got a web server, database, cache, authentication service, and maybe a dozen other microservices as well. Each one's generating logs, and they're all sitting in different places.
Yeah, see, microservices is the nightmare. Like this open telemetry stuff, and you're using logs. There's got to be a different way of doing this. That's why you got to avoid the microservices for this exact reason. If you're a big company, you're not even listening to my channel anyways. It doesn't matter. I'm talking about smaller developers, 1 person, 2 person, 5 person teams, where you're building the web app backend yourself. There's just a way to do it that's like way more elegant and way more nice to modify, update, delete, change. There's a way to program these things that is now known by Igor Bugienko, so he and Alan Kay. I forgot that name. Alan Kay. So his style, back to original object-oriented programming, or just messaging. We talk about messaging with these individual contained entities and contained organisms, basically, that are all self-contained and all can only be sent messages back and forth. You can't just dig inside it and modify its behavior like C++ style class-oriented programming. Let's keep going. Go.
Now there's an issue with your app and you're trying to check your logs across 10 different services. That's not going to be very fun. This is why we aggregate and centralize our logs. When you funnel all your logs into one place, you can search across everything at once. You can see how problems in one service impacted another. And
whew, if we're using logs, man, there's got to be a better way. These telemetry services, there's got to be a way to visually track these things instead of using logs. This is like 1970s style. There's got these telemetry services got to have some sort of user interface that shows the stuff going back and forth. Because going and digging through logs through microservices, that's death. Just death.
Your whole team is looking at the same data really easily. You're not SSHing into 20 different servers just to debug one issue.
But you will anyway, because getting all those teams together to do the logs the right way. Come on. There's got to be, to make microservices. This is what I looked into. I was like, why isn't this stuff available? This thing, how are you monitoring all this stuff? We use logs. It's like, oh man, no wonder this is gonna die. This is bad. This is a bad idea. You need better software, more visualization software, better libraries, way more money applied to it, because you got to integrate all these systems across all these different devices, across all these different libraries, languages, and stuff, and standardize it. Good luck, guys.
Now, the real magic here happens when you can...
Wouldn't it be easier to just use one language for the back end, the front end, and iOS, and web, and desktop, and like Kotlin? Just one language, one set of libraries, one methodology, one UI toolkit, one back end to do all this crazy crap. Wouldn't that be a better way to do it? No, we have to use C++ over here. We're gonna use Swagger and like all these other languages all over the place. Like, come on, guys. Isn't that getting old? Can't we just do one? And I'm talking about small teams, right? 2, 3 people, 5 people. You can have one set of UI, one set of languages for all that stuff, and it'll greatly, radically simplifies this whole process. This is more. This guy's kind of talking more enterprise level, who are still suckered into doing microservices.
Correlate events. Say a user reports that they couldn't check out. Now you can see the payment service was slow, which caused the cart service to time out, which made the front end show an error, all in one place, all connected. Start centralizing your logs early as well. You might think, I only have 2 services I can manage, but trust me, by the time you really need centralized logging, you really need it. But hold up, before you start dumping all your logs into one place, let's talk about retention policies. A busy application can generate terabytes of logs in no time, and storage isn't free. This is why we need a retention.
Well, if you're logging every goddamn little thing that you're only going to look at, yeah, maybe. And why are you keeping so many logs for so long? It's weird.
Policy. An example of one.
There's definitely some scammy stuff for these cloud providers, this log shit.
would be
for
something
sure.
like, let's say, keeping recent logs readily available for quick debugging, moving older logs to cheaper cold storage, and then eventually saying goodbye to logs you don't really need anymore. Remember though, not all logs are created equal. Say we have error logs, maybe keep those around for 90 days. Say you have some debug logs, maybe 7 days is plenty. And if you have security audit logs, those might need to stick around for a year or so. The best time to set up a retention policy is before your first cloud bill gives you a heart attack. Now let's talk about
Heart attack. So he does though. There's a little bit of like make sure you log everything. You might need it one day, and we're gonna charge you out the ass for those type files.
securing your logs. Think about what's in your logs. You've got user IDs, IP addresses, database queries, authentication attempts,
Sure,
error
but
messages
you have that
with
stuff
internal
anyway.
details. Logs can often contain things you don't want getting out. Even if the information seems mundane, it's best to follow the security by obscurity approach and not have this information out there. So
Yeah,
how do we
sure.
lock this down? We can do this in 3 main ways. The first is encryption in transit. Protect your logs as they move from your app to storage. Then you've got encryption at rest. Keep them secure while they're stored. And then the third is
I mean, if your user account gets violated, you should be using passkeys and all that stuff on these accounts. But I mean, encrypting it. I mean, maybe. I don't know. Maybe that's maybe too much. That may be too much for most applications. I think it might be too much. Maybe for your particular application, maybe it makes sense. But like, that may be a little overkill.
access controls. Make sure only the right people can read them. For example, junior developers might only need to see basic application logs, whereas senior engineers might get access to more sensitive system logs, and then the security team might get full access
It's big enterprise stuff.
for investigations. Some log managers will even provide audit logging, so you can track who accessed what and when they did. Now that
Sure, okay, that's
we know
even
how
more,
to protect
that's even more advanced. But man, that stuff is so like if you're smart enough, you can bypass all that stuff. So it's just how much effort do you want to put in? How much benefit is going to come out of that?
our logs though, let's talk about what should not be in them in the first place. And wow, some companies learn this the hard way. In 2018, Twitter had to force all passwords for all of their users to be reset. Why? Because they accidentally logged their passwords in plain text. Even GitHub.
Of course it did. Of course they did.
in a similar situation. These aren't small companies. These are companies
So
with
bad.
amazing engineers, and they still mess this up. Here's what you don't.
Are they amazing? Really? Twitter? It was so amazing. Dude, we're talking about 2008 web-based technology. Are you serious? Oh, it's so amazing. Come on now. Come on now. We're not going to space or Mars. All right, we're not calculating orbits of planets, light years away. We're displaying tweets. Come on now.
Want to log. Instead, do this. Here's a cool way to do this using Go's slog package. Now, even if someone accidentally tries to log the entire user object, only the ID shows up. It's a really nice safety net. For extra protection, set up filters in your logging pipeline to catch and redact anything that looks sensitive, like credit
That's a cool idea.
card numbers, social security,
But why are
API
you logging out this stuff? And why are you logging out these numbers, the sensitive information? Why are you doing that? This should be squirreled away in some other database someplace else. Why? Yeah. So maybe this is a malicious actor, maybe stuff to prevent malicious actors. But even then, if you let people into your code base that you don't trust, bad things are going to happen. That's just how it goes.
before they even reach your log storage. I recommend using the OpenTelemetry collector for this. Remember, the best sensitive data leak is the one that never happens because you never logged it in the first place. Now let's talk about performance impact because yes, unfortunately writing those logs could actually take CPU cycles and memory. Here's a basic Go web server with no logging. This can handle about 192,000 requests per second. Now what happens when we add in some basic logging with a tool called Logrus? Well, we see a 20% performance drop. If we use Go's newer slog package though, we only take a 3% hit. Much better. So how do we keep our logs without just...
That's why it's all this info stuff, right? It's all this info crap. We don't need all the info logs. We don't really. Errors. Focus on errors. Focus on making those the best as possible. And this info stuff, just nah.
destroying performance? Well, the first is choose an efficient logging library. Like we just saw, using slog is way better. The second is use log sampling in high traffic paths. Third, log to a separate disk partition, not the main one your application is running on. And then the fourth is make sure to run load tests to catch your logging bottlenecks early. Let's wrap up with a common mistake that I see developers make now then, and that is trying to use logs for everything. While logs are great for debugging, they're not ideal for real-time monitoring. Imagine you're trying to answer a simple question, is my service healthy right now? Exactly. You could grep through your logs, count the errors, calculate rates, but this would be extremely tedious. This is where metrics come in.
That's how it's been done. Like that was how almost But not like academia tells you how to do this stuff. They don't even talk about this stuff. This is not even mentioned once.
Logs tell you what happened. Metrics tell you how often things are happening. You can
Yeah.
spot trends. You can set alerts, catch problems
Yeah,
before
this
they
is
become.
the stuff. More of this kind of things. Automated. Don't you rely on programmers to type in text that you have to go look at with text with millions of records.
Disasters. Use your logs to debug problems, but use your metrics to know when you have a problem.
Yeah.
And there you have it, 12 logging best practices that will save you countless hours of
So-
debugging and probably a few incidents too.
I'm a big fan of KTOR. Go like and subscribe. Better Stack. He's got good stuff. Yeah, I'm a big fan of KTOR. They have all the stuff built into it, and it's all written in Kotlin, so you can debug it and look at it. And I have an example of that on my GitHub, so you can go see how I put that together, how I structure things, and all that kind of stuff. And I'm back with videos. Yay! All right. Like and subscribe. I'll talk to you soon. Thanks.